Hi again then guys, and welcome to another circuit tune for Gran Turismo Sport, this time for the first of the 5 cars that we're going to tune in the 1.43 update, and what better place to start than with the Honda S2000. Now my hopes for this car were good, they were measured, but they were good because it's already an N200, it has a lot of potential, so I was curious to see what it could do. As it turns out, it can do a whole lot. This is a very good car in N200. Now, as far as the upgrades go, of course, I would recommend having it on the peak of N200, which is 101%, so you can't exactly improve the power that much. As far as the weight, I would also, of course, recommend dropping that as low as it can go, at least when you can, if the lobby will allow that, in other words. As far as the tyres, we've got Sports Softs. I know that sometimes people say, why don't you just go for racing tyres? Well, the reason is simple, and I have mentioned it before. If you build a car only to use racing tyres, and then for whatever reason have to use sports tyres, it may be really bad on sports tyres. Whereas if you make a car good on sports tyres, then generally speaking, if you then go and use racing tyres, it will be even better. So then you know that you can run it on sports, and it will still be very good. Now, as far as the suspension goes, I've dropped the ride height quite a lot. It's only 5mm higher than the lowest. As far as the frequency, we've got 2.15, which is also quite stiff as well. For the anti-roll, we've got 7 and 6. For the compression side of the dampers, 64 with 92 on the rebound. As far as camber, there's definitely a lot of variation that you can have with this build. Some people might find it a little bit too heavy through corners. Personally, I like it. And it definitely favours wider tracks. It really likes long flowing circuits, anything from Dragon Trail to the Nordschleife and pretty much anything in between. So if you find it a little bit too heavy, you could increase or lower the camber depending on if you want it to be even more grippy, less grippy, etc. As far as the toe, that is neutral. Of course, there's no downforce to work with anyway. For the diff, I've got the lowest initial torque and braking, and then the highest acceleration, as you can see. Once again, diff tuning is very much a personal thing, so I would recommend trying that. If you don't like it, you could change it. If you do, then of course go with it. Or you could just experiment with other settings if you want to anyway. And finally, for the gearbox, of course, as I always say, you do not have to keep this in N200. If you want to retune it to N300, for instance, you absolutely can, because these tunes are more about getting the handling to be spot on rather than just everything to be spot on. So if you want to retune it, give it more power, you can do that. However, you will need to change the gearing, of course, if you do, because this is very much so pretty much just designed to get through the gearbox very quickly, to have good acceleration, but not so much top speed. You can get up around the 140s, maybe around 150, but that's about it. So it's not a speed tune by any means. So as far as the gearbox goes, you want the fully customized transmission, then for the auto setting, 124 miles an hour, for the individual gears, 3.5, which helps the launch and low-end acceleration quite a lot. 2.5 for second, then 1950, 1625, fifth is all the way to the left, and sixth is to 1.1, I should say. If you find that that's not enough top speed, you could lower that a bit more, which of course will give you a bit more speed, but it will make that top-end acceleration a little bit more sluggish. For instance, for the final straight on the Nürburgring, as an example. And then finally, with that final drive, I've got 4.1. So again, you can change that if you need to or if you want to. If you do give the car more power, you'll definitely want to stretch those gears out a little bit more, because otherwise you'll just hit the red line too quickly in 6th gear. So that's it for the tune. But now, of course, as always, you want to see what it can do, especially compared to all of the other N200 builds that I've done. So at the end of the day, what is this car capable of? The S2000 is a good car, it's in N200, but at the same time I've done a lot of N200 tunes and a lot of them are very good. Even some of the other Hondas that I've done, like the NSX, the Civic, of course the Integra. So how does this one stack up? Well, interestingly, it's better than all of those Hondas. This is literally faster in N200 than my DC2 Integra, my EK Civic, and my NSXR. That is pretty impressive, and what a way for this car to make its debut in the game, or return to the game, technically debut in this game. That's impressive stuff, but what I would argue is even more impressive is it's only 0.6 of a second behind the fastest N200 tune I've done, which is the Porsche 356. And of course, as I often refer to, that's a 1.2 million credit car, which is a whole lot more than this is. So the car definitely has proven itself very quickly. Not only is it a car that people love anyway, that it's a lot of fun, it's just a good sports car, but it definitely has the makings for a really competitive track car as well, and certainly a good little racer in N200 or in N300 if you want to use it for that as well. I would caution you potentially on N300 and above, because of course you very quickly get into territory with stuff like Porsche GT3s and the Group 3 road cars, and that's some pretty OP territory, but as long as you keep it in N200, I would suggest you'd have the best results from this car. Not to say that you can't win in higher classes, you can of course, but the competition becomes much more heady up there than it is in N200. So overall, if you do use this tune or some personal variation of it, I hope of course you have a ton of fun with it. And if you want to check out all of my other tunes, including, of course, for that Porsche 356 and various others, including the Hondas as well, then click right here on screen. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.